Have you ever been to one of those corporate cities? You know the type. They're sterile, everything closes at 6 p.m. Maybe there's a Sweetgreen or an Orange Theory near the office, but zero nightlife. The restaurants are bland and overpriced, and people's lives revolve around work.
Gen Z boss telling me, Gen Z boss telling me, itty bitty cheese and a bulb, itty bitty cheese and a bulb.
These types of cities are often criticized for having the same boring cookie-cutter architecture. They're usually very car-centric in their design with not a lot of walkability. They're often full of national chain stores and restaurants with not a lot of local flavor. And they don't typically have much that's well known to make them unique or distinct from any other cities around them. That doesn't mean that any of these cities are bad places to live, work, or visit, but they're designed with a very particular lifestyle in mind, even if that's unintentional at times. So I asked a bunch of my followers on Instagram and Threads about which US cities sort of embody this energy the most.
Hey y'all, I'm working on an idea for videos, and I want to know, what are like boring, soulless corporate cities? Give me some in the box here. I have a few in mind, but I want to hear what y'all think.
And these few cities are the ones that most people seem to agree on. So let's start with Irvine, California. It's got the UC, so technically it's a college town, but don't expect any action. Its downtown looks like this. And you'll definitely need a car to get anywhere. It's one of those places that prides itself on being safe and a great place to raise a family, but it's a little too safe. Irvine was started as a planned city by the aptly named Irvine Company. It has been since its birth a corporate city. The original designers, William Pereira and Raymond Watson, created it to be divided up into multiple little villages, which were bounded by 6-lane arterial boulevards. So Irvine has always been extremely car-pilled. They do have decent biking infrastructure as well, but like most of Southern California, everything is really spread out, and public transit could be better. There are also tons of major companies that either have their global or regional headquarters here, which gives it that distinct corporate culture. Some examples are going to be the gaming company Blizzard or In-N-Out Burger. Car companies like Kia Motors and Ford have offices here, Toshiba, Broadcom, Panasonic, a whole bunch more. So the job market in Irvine is very strong, and it has a high average income for a reason. Irvine's often seen as dull and boring. There's not much to do outside of go to work and maybe go to the park on your day off. It is good for those who want a slow pace of life and great weather, but that's about it. So then there's Stamford, Connecticut. Its nickname is the city that works, since there's really nothing else to do there but go to your 9 to 5. It's just close enough to New York that you can tell all your friends back in the city that you'll come and visit every weekend. You're just a stone's throw away. But once you actually move there, you're never leaving. Kiss your friends goodbye. The only socialization you're really gonna get is the mandatory after-work happy hours with your boss and coworker. Being an older city in the Northeast, its downtown core is very walkable, and it's connected to the rest of the region through some of the best rail service in the country, but go out to the suburbs and it's as car dependent as anywhere else. Fun fact about Stamford, it's home to the WWE headquarters. So if you're a professional wrestling fan, I guess you can see where the magic happens. They do have this really cool gigantic championship belt out front, which is a great photo op. Stamford is technically part of the greater New York City metro area, but it barely qualifies. Connecticut as a whole is where young New York urban professionals go to die, and then they arise like a phoenix from the ashes as a jaded middle manager, locked into a cycle of work, consume, sleep, repeat.
Coming to bed, honey?
Yes, dear.
It does have some nice parks and beaches, but given that it's pretty cold for half the year, you're really only going to enjoy them in the summertime. They really love their boats here too. The marina is kind of the signature part of the city. And Stamford is another one of those safe, comfortable places where you'll find a reasonably good quality of life, but it doesn't really have much of its own identity outside of being a great place to do business. It's kind of like Delaware, but you can escape to Manhattan on the weekends, or you'll tell yourself that at least. And what about Charlotte, North Carolina? I think this one really comes to mind when you think about those soulless, sterile corporate cities. It's one of the largest finance hubs outside of New York, so you're gonna get lots of finance bros who are ready to settle down and live life a little slower. Given its absolutely chaotic road layout, it's almost entirely unwalkable. But at least it's home to the NASCAR Hall of Fame, so there's that. I was browsing r/Charlotte earlier, and one commenter said that the architecture is plain and boring. The music scene is one of the worst in this part of the country, and there's very few activities to actually do for fun that don't involve sports or drinking. Given that it's the East Coast headquarters of Bank of America, Wells Fargo, and a bunch of other financial institutions, working in a high-stress job like that is gonna drive you to drink a little bit, so I don't blame them. But Charlotte doesn't get enough credit. Nearly 66% of the city is green space, and at least according to Wikipedia, that does make it the #1 greenest city in America. And I've heard their barbecue is pretty good, but I've never tried it. It's also a hub for American Airlines, so chances are you've probably been stuck in a layover there at least once. I know I have, and the Charlotte airport has, at least in my opinion, some of the worst food I've had at any airport in the entire world. And I've been to a lot of airports. But you can't judge a city by its airport. Charlotte's biggest claim to fame is that it was the location of season 9 of Married at First Sight. And man, those couples were unhinged.
Sick of this, go away, then go away. Are you happy? No.
If you know, you know. And we can't forget Silicon Valley. Holy shit. It is dull. I think San Jose itself gets a bad rap. It's solid. It's got great food, a decent downtown. When it's on, it's on. But if you step into Santa Clara, it's just tech office parks and suburban sprawl. But it's okay if you're a 49ers fan because they've got the football stadium. Santa Clara is so lifeless that when they announced it as the location of next year's Super Bowl, they didn't even invite the mayor of Santa Clara to accept the honors or whatever. That went to San Jose's mayor. And for a city of 130,000 people, Santa Clara has no proper downtown at all. It used to, but they demolished it in the 1960s for some reason. True story, by the way. It turns out that the city council had voted against the wishes of nearly all of its residents to bulldoze the entire 8-block area in order to receive federal urban renewal funding. Now, urban renewal has always been used in hostile ways to displace marginalized communities, and none of the businesses that were there before returned, and they were supposed to replace it with a space-age high-rise development, but that also never materialized, and it ended up just being a depressing little shopping center and not much else. Because Santa Clara has no real core, no downtown, it ended up losing its identity over the years, and now it's just a suburb of San Jose. It used to have Great America, which is a really nice amusement park, but it's been closed for a couple of years now, and I'm not certain if it's reopened. The public transit in Santa Clara isn't terrible, but it's still a car-centric city. And there are plans to put in a BART station here eventually. The thing about Santa Clara is it does thrive because of its proximity to other cooler cities, with San Francisco, Oakland, and San Jose being a short drive away. To its credit, Santa Clara, like the rest of Silicon Valley, has a wide variety of food and restaurant options. I know that you can get amazing boba and Korean food over on El Camino Real. Good stuff. But there's pretty much no nightlife, and the culture of the city is focused almost entirely around working in tech. And the rents are extraordinarily high, especially for what you get. You're paying San Francisco prices to live in an apartment complex surrounded by parking lots with no air conditioning in a city where the summers get hot. I'm talking over 100 degrees sometimes. But overall, Santa Clara is okay. A few honorable mentions that I want to bring up that aren't quite worthy of a full segment, but generally still have that sterile corporate vibe or are just kind of boring. A lot of people told me about Jacksonville, Florida, and I can see why. It's pretty spread out, doesn't really have an identity, even though it has over 1 million people, and nobody really knows about it. Fresno, California got mentioned a lot, but I don't see it. Fresno sucks, don't get me wrong, but it's for very different reasons than being too corporate or soulless. Nobody there is really corporate unless they're like a rich person. It's just dry, hot, and car-centric. But it does have good food and a strong nightlife. Another one was Omaha, Nebraska, and I can almost see this one. Its biggest industries are insurance, the railroad, and agriculture, but it had a pretty good music scene like 20 years ago, so I'm holding out hope that Omaha will be cool again one day. Burbank, California got mentioned a lot, and I can see why. It's mainly just film and TV industry people, and it does seem a bit dull and lifeless compared to like LA, which is right next door. Salt Lake City was another one that was mentioned that I considered adding, but its strong transit and walkability and the proximity to beautiful mountains kind of saves it. Plus, I love going to Kilby Block Party every year, and that's definitely not boring. And everyone mentioned Denver, but I still feel like it has enough of an identity beyond just corporate America to not make this list. And then there's here's my personal favorite corporate city, Arlington, Virginia. It is so sterile, so clean. It's got the Pentagon, it's got Lockheed Martin, it's got Raytheon. But if you drive through Pentagon City or Roslyn, you just feel like you're being watched there all the time. And of course, it's got a Sweetgreen. Of course, there's a McDonald's in the Pentagon. The thing about Arlington, though, is it does kind of attract like a lot of nerds of like all ages. If you like to get real freaky, Arlington might work. But if you want a federal government max and become a Fed and just put on a suit every day, go home to your family in your weird little apartment building in Crystal City, Arlington is the way to go. Arlington is like one of those fake towns in North Korea that they build to convince foreigners that their economy's doing okay, except for super American. This is where the real power of the US government can be found. DC is all for show, but Arlington is the real deal. That's where the hardcore feds go. I will say that not all of Northern Virginia is bland and boring, but it does kind of come with the territory of working for the government. To its credit, some of the best Italian food that I've ever had outside of New York City was next door in Alexandria, at this little hole-in-the-wall place in a random strip mall. So there's good to be found everywhere. Alexandria is a bit cuter and it does have more history, but everything in Arlington feels like it was built like 20 to 30 years ago. So if you like highways and parking lots and big car-centric infrastructure, Northern Virginia is perfect. But it's also linked up to the DC Metro, and you can live here without a car, but only in certain areas. That being said, I do want to take a moment to say that all of these places that I've mentioned, this doesn't mean that they're all bad, all boring, that they have no life whatsoever. This is just kind of the reputation that they've gotten, and every place has its redeeming qualities that makes it great to live for someone. And if you came here expecting City Skylines gameplay, I'm so sorry. But I hope you like the new stuff too. So I want to ask all of you, what are some other cities that you think could be soulless, corporate, bland, generic? Let me know in the comments. Also, a big thank you to all of the Patreon members listed here. I couldn't keep doing this without y'all. And if you do want to support me, there are tiers as low as $2 a month. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you next time.